Taking starch and deodorant. At 4 o'clock in the morning.
Good evening. Welcome to the Selectmen's meeting for November 27th, 2018. Can I get a roll call, please?
Cindy King is here.
Wayne Miller's here.
And Sue Licio is here. Could you join me in a pledge of allegiance, please? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hope everybody had a nice holiday. I'd like to announce that the meeting is being tape recorded. Anybody else recording? Chairman's additions or deletions, just that I'm going to have a little update under 5.1. Talk a little bit about the cable committee. Public comment period. Anybody public comment? Kathy?
Can I just make an announcement?
You may.
So Monday, December 3rd, which is next Monday, is the last day to register to vote for the special town meeting. We will, that's if you're not a registered voter in town. We'll be open from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. And it's also the first day that dog licenses will be available for 2019. So we'll be open all that time.
That time again.
Yes, it is.
Are you gonna do your contest again?
Yes, and we will do the #1 tag contest. So if you license your dog before February 1st, then you get entered into the contest. You get the blanket and tag.
Yes.
So that'll be good. And then the other thing I just want to mention, on December 4th, which is Tuesday, we'll be closing at 4 p.m. The town clerk's office will be. And we won't open till 1:30 on December 5th. We have a conference to go to.
Okay.
Okay, so just, I have it on the calendar, on the website, but just while I'm here,
Excellent. Thank you.
okay?
Thank you for the reminder of the registry to vote thing, too.
Yeah, I thought it'd be a good idea just to mention it.
Any other public comment?
I'm Laura Dole, Meadow Road. I spoke up a couple of meetings ago about the appointment to the Conservation Commission, and I just wanted to mention that Ward Clark is here tonight. He's one of the people who wanted to be on the commission but wasn't considered. He's here.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Under appointments, 2.1, consideration of appointment to the Conservation Commission. It's my understanding that the only name that we got is the name that we still have, and it's Ann, right? Ann LeClaire, from the Conservation. Jim, can you just review again the process?
Sure.
And the confusion therein.
Sure. Instead of wading into the confusion, I'll lay out the process, and then if there are any questions. When there's a vacancy in a multiple-member board, the remaining members are to give notice to the appointing authority forthwith. Within 30 days of that notice, if the appointing board has not made an appointment, the remaining multiple members may themselves make the appointment. Further, you have a policy here in the town of Townsend, a selectmen's policy, written policy that indicates that you will consider the recommendation of the remaining members of the committee regarding the appointment to fill the vacancy.
That's a Board of Selectmen policy.
That is correct.
And that's talking about what's traditionally been done.
Correct.
Okay.
If there's nothing compulsory other than the fact that it is your voted policy.
And the first part that you talked about, where is that written? The
A
appointing?
number of different places. It's in the general law. I believe there's reference in the charter as well. Carolyn, confirmed charter, right, as well?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Filling a vacancy, section 7.
Sometimes I ask questions because I just want you to
Sure, no, I understand.
say the answer.
And I generally can sense that, which is why if I'm not 100% certain, I want to
Yeah,
check
okay.
first.
questions?
Oh, might have been answered, so
Well, I mean, I'll entertain a motion.
I don't have the,
Will you take a comment from the floor?
I would have a few minutes ago, but I think we're past that. Okay?
I don't have the recommendation in the packet from last week.
The recommendation from the Conservation Commission was to appoint Ann LeQuire with a term to begin at appointment and to end June 30th, 2020.
So is that filling somebody, that's filling somebody who left?
Yes.
No, I just wanted to make sure I had everything. I move the board approve Ann LeCure to the Conservation Committee for a term ending June 30th, 2020. Is that correct? Correct. Okay.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Board have any other discussion?
The only thing I'd like to point to all the other appointed boards that we intend on following this procedure moving forward, so that we're notified when there isn't vacancy, so we can follow the correct procedure and law.
Yeah, the only thing, other than that, too, is I think we need to look at the way that Board of Selectmen policy is written. I think it could be tightened up a little bit, but I'd also, when the time comes for us to review it, I would hope that we would put something in there about making sure that that there are at least resumes put together with the volunteer form, and interviews.
Yeah, because
Done.
if I understand it correctly, the volunteer forms come back to you, Kathy?
Yeah, we stamp them in and then we distribute them to the committees.
Okay. Can we have that as a pool that's available to us as well?
Yeah, see, I think we need to talk about all those things,
Yeah.
and we talked about some of that last time, anyway. So if we have that on our to-do list, that would be good, just in general, tightening all of that up.
Can I make a suggestion as part of that?
I'll let you, Lance.
Lance Lehman. So, am I right in assuming that there's a husband and wife on the board now?
That is correct, if we
So-
vote on that.
So, my question is, I would think that that's a conflict of interest.
It's not.
Well, I would perceive it differently.
It's not, and as a matter of fact, we have a current husband and wife that have been serving on one of our very important boards for a number of years. And they do a good job of, I'm sure, arguing with each other, even in the meetings. So, and that's what I would expect most husbands and wives to do, regardless of being on the same board. But it is not a conflict of interest, there's no money involved in that. I mean, you could call ethics and
Yeah.
whatever. I mean, you'd have to put in a complaint, they don't give you advice.
No, they do want to hear, you can ask. You don't have to file a complaint with ethics to get an opinion.
If it's you.
Yeah, if it's
Right,
somebody
yes,
else.
that's right.
Yeah,
If
they-
it's,
they
let me,
won't.
yeah, I should take that back.
So I mean,
If it doesn't involve you,
Ann
you
and
can't
Jim
call
could
about
call
someone else.
ethics and ask
That's
them,
right.
just to be safe, that's all.
Yeah, we've had an ethic, actually, we've had an ethics opinion on family that, on family members in the past. Not like really recently, but I remember in the last 5 or 10 years, I remember that came up before at
Yes,
some
it
point.
did.
And
It
it's
did.
been, ethics has ruled that, no, that's not.
Yep. Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
If she gets sworn in now?
No, well, she can.
2.2, consideration of appointment of a wiring inspector and alternate wiring inspector.
Madam Chair, you have documents before you. 2.2, memorandum from Richard Hanks, the building commissioner, and specifically, he is formally requesting that Daniel A. Cushion of 8 Marion Lane, Nashua, New Hampshire, be appointed as the inspector of wires effective November 30th, 2018. Mr. Cushion has been our alternate wiring inspector for the past 7 years. Mr. Cushion has done a terrific job thus far as the alternate inspector, covering inspections for Mr. Choate, and also plans, review, and inspections that he has done on the new North Middlesex Regional High School project. I'm confident that Mr. Cushion will continue to be a great asset to our inspection team. Should you have any questions regarding the appointment, please let me know. And Mr. Hanks is here this evening to answer any questions you might have.
Good evening.
Hi, Rich. Can I get a motion?
Sure. I move, do them at the same time, or do they have to be separate?
Let's do them separately.
I move the board appoint Peter, oops, wrong one. I move the board appoint Daniel Cushion, 8 Marion Lane, Nashua, New Hampshire, to be the alternate wiring inspector, or inspector of wires effective November 30th, 2018.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions?
He's pretty qualified to me.
Okay, not all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Madam Chair, before we go to the next, if it would please the board, I'd like to draft a letter of appreciation for Mr. Choate, who's our retiring inspector of wires. He's been with us for a good number of years and done a great job for us, and he's heading off into other ventures.
Okay,
Okay. Thank you.
sounds good.
Thank you for that, Jim.
And next you have,
And the alternate wiring
yes,
inspector?
next you have a request for the appointment of an alternate wiring inspector, requesting that Peter Martin of 2 Peach Lane, Townsend, be appointed as the alternate inspector of wires effective December 1st, 2018. Mr. Martin has great qualifications and is also the wiring inspector for the town of Dunstable. I believe Mr. Martin will be a great asset to our team.
I move the board appoint Peter Martin as the alternate inspector of wires effective December 1st, 2018.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Not all those in favor?
I had a question first.
A question?
Does this match up with the wiring inspector's effective dates? 'Cause
No, it doesn't. I overlapped them by a day. Only reason is because Dan is the alternate now, so he'll take over.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So it's just, I probably could have them the same day, but I just overlapped them by.
Wait till the seat's empty before you put the other guy in it.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Good catch.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Judge.
Awesome, thank you very much.
Thank you. 2.2, discussion update regarding the water pump station bridge project. Jim?
Yes, Madam Chair. You and I have been communicating on this matter for coming on a couple of weeks now. The Board of Water Commissioners came before the Select Board looking for authorization and execution of a contract for this bridge project. It was not one meeting, but there was a subsequent meeting where the dollar value was changed, and there was a description of what the change was about. Talked about stiffening up the abutments and some other details around the project. I can't speak for members of the board that were in attendance, but for myself, my understanding that evening was that that was for the bridge project. What I've come to understand is that it was actually for the bridge proper, the piece of material, or the pieces of material that are the bridge that was being purchased. That's what that contract was that came before you as members of the board, not the contract for the entire project, but just for the purchase of the structure set on the side of the road delivered. So there's been an additional requirement that the bridge be set, that the abutments be installed, that the old bridge be removed, the abutments for the new structure be installed, and the new bridge structure placed. And when I first became aware of this, Mr. Rayfuse, the superintendent, sent me a message saying that there had been a mishap, that the contractor doing the install had driven a piece of equipment across the bridge prior to the final decking being placed. So there was the steel superstructure, there was the wood subdeck, but not yet the final wood subdecking. And that the equipment, while it was well under the rated weight capacity of the bridge, once complete, apparently was greater than the weight-bearing capacity of the not yet complete structure, because the one of the wheels on the piece of equipment went through the subdecking and bent some of the superstructure underneath. So you may have seen, as you've driven by in the last week and a half or so, that there are cones in front of the bridge and that there's a steel plate on the front right quadrant of the bridge, and that's because that's where the damage took place. Paul was very good at getting on the issue quickly. I'm happy that he called. We were able to get on the phone with council to go over the situation, what the options are. The original discussion was that the contractor should be asked to have the repair work designed by his engineer and stamped, and then the liability for that repair runs to the engineer whose stamp is affixed to the repair plan, and that the repair then be done at the expense of the contractor. And the contractor was a willing participant in wanting to make this right. So council's opinion on the phone with Paul and I that day was that course of action. Subsequent to that, Paul informed me that he was pursuing an alternative path that would involve calling the company that provided the bridge.
The manufacturer.
The manufacturer of the bridge, informing them of what occurred and asking for them to come inspect the bridge and make a recommendation for a repair. And that it would then be determined who was going to do the repair, whether the manufacturer of the bridge, would do the repair and be paid, or whether the contractor that was doing the install would rely upon their repair plan and do the work. As of today, and just so I don't miss anything, I did get a communication from Paul. He unfortunately wasn't able to be here this evening. Had hoped to be, but ultimately wasn't able. And he, in response to my question for an update, writes as follows. It doesn't look like myself or my commissioners can make it. I do note that we have one member of the Board of Water Commissioners in attendance. In summary, myself, our engineer, so just to pause there, the Board of Water Commissioners does have an on-site engineer that represents the town's interest. They are the ones that did the design for the installation. It's their stamp that is affixed to the install plans that the contractor was following. So, in summary, myself, Paul, our engineer, Paragon, the company that built the bridge, and Gary Shepard are working together to get this resolved as quickly as possible. Right now, Paragon will honor their warranty. They are requiring that the subdecking be removed, which I totally agree with, to fully assess the rest of the structure for additional damage or conclude that the damage is confined to the one particular area. So just to paint that picture for you, the subdecking is, it's a series of 2x8s, I believe. There's actually a piece of one on the cabinet in the other room that run lengthwise along the travel lane, and the top structure would be going in the alternate direction. Then Paragon can provide us an accurate quote for the repairs. Mr. Shepard said he can remove the subdecking and will perform any repairs in accordance with any plans Paragon designs if they don't require their people to do it. We've conveyed to Paragon that time is of the essence to get the repairs done, because although we've been getting by heating the pump station with propane heaters, we need whatever repairs done to finish the bridge so we can have Unitil come back and install the new gas service which will be attached to the bridge. Then there's another issue that after we're done this, Paul would like me to bring up with you. So that's the update as of today. Paragon has not yet provided the repair plan, but Paul's expectation is that they are going to, and then it will be, the next level of conversation is who does the repair, whose stamp is it? Presumably, it's going to be Paragon's stamp, if they're the ones putting the plan together, and at whose ultimate expense. So that's the update.
So we don't know if Paragon is going to say, well, we'll put our stamp on this repair plan, but we would want to be the ones to do the job.
That, I would expect that would be the likely thing from Paragon. If they're going to stamp it, they don't want to be paid for redesign and for the value of the stamp, and then they're going to want to do the repair to make certain that the repair is being conducted in complete compliance with the stamped plan.
Questions?
Yeah, Mike, one of the concerns, you have a number of companies that you talked about, and different people inspecting and different people doing the work, and the contractor admitting liability and that they were going to repair it. I don't want to see us taking too many risks in, just to be in a hurry. That I think it's important that we not put ourselves in a position where our taxpayers, we're going to have to go to the taxpayers and say, all these things happen and we have to fit the bill
Right.
because of ABC. Or I'm not real comfortable of a company that has liability in an accident that happened, that they're claiming that they're taking responsibility, but they're going to have their own engineers inspect the damage and do the repair based on their own people.
And I should interrupt, that's not going to happen because the
Right,
contractor has
okay.
said that he does not have an engineer that could do that.
Oh, okay. That sounds like a conflict to me that puts somebody, oh, yeah, it's okay. We fixed it. I want to make sure that we have somebody that's looking out for our interest to make sure that the bridge is in as good a shape as we expected it to be. It sounds like, I know that Paragon is, we've heard that name quite a bit. I know Paragon is the original owner, they're providing the bridge, and that they're willing to, it sounds like, take some liability on, we're going to certify that the bridge is repaired.
I don't know, I don't know
No,
that.
not
What I
Well,
know-
when I say, I'm using legal terms that I'm probably not qualified to use, but to say that they're looking to certify that it meets their satisfaction.
My knowledge is exactly what I read, which is
Right,
that
okay.
they are in the process of looking at what the repair needs to be. Who ultimately draws it and stamps it has not yet been determined. But
Oh, okay.
your point is...
But, you know,
your
my point is, I just don't want us to be holding the bag on something that, you know, there was an accident that it wasn't our fault,
Right.
and that we cover the bases, and that we're not, it's, at this stage, or at least based on my understanding of what's happening, that we shouldn't have to pay for we should not take on additional costs because of an error that somebody else made.
Understood.
Does that make sense?
Understood, and my
And
understanding
I
is
don't want
that
to
the
make
contractor...
changes just to be because we're in a hurry.
Right. My understanding is that the contractor doesn't wish that the town take on the additional cost, any additional cost. In fact, consistent with my experience with the contractor, his response was that he would make the repairs with significantly thicker steel than is currently being utilized, and that he would have the welds certified. I'd like to tell you I know what that means, but it
Well,
must mean something.
I mean,
just
but
don't
that
know.
doesn't make sense to me, because that means that the contractor is saying, this is what I think it needs, when we've already got Paragon coming out saying,
Right, this is before,
Oh,
this
okay.
was the initial
All right.
response.
oh, all right, so you're just saying that the contractor's willing to take on whatever work needs to be done in order to fix that?
Right, that was the original response
Okay.
was, I will not only fix it, but I'll make it stiffer,
If he needs
thicker
to.
steel and, certify the welds.
What I don't want the contractor doing is coming up with their own solution. The solution should be whatever Paragon says needs to be done to make their bridge that they manufactured whole,
Right.
okay?
And I know it sounds like the Board of Water Commissioners identified, or Paul at least identified some concerns on time between contracting with Unitil and, gee, we're using propane heaters. That as much as I feel for them, that I'd hate to see them rush to get this done if there's alternatives that can, just to make sure that it's done right,
It will be done.
done right the second time, if I want to call it the second time, we're doing this the second time, but if we can make sure that as much hardship as there might be, that we don't rush through things, because sometimes we do that, and I think if we just make sure that the i's are dotted and the t's are crossed as we move through the,
No, we'll be
Right
monitoring the situation.
well, I'm sorry?
We'll be monitoring the
Oh, okay.
situation.
So we have an engineer that's overseeing the whole thing.
Well, Ty and Bond is our engineering group. They've been doing work for Townsend for a while, so, yeah, they will put the final okay on it on our side.
So they're like the clerk of the works or whatever you would.
They designed the install.
Okay.
So the multiple sheet,
And so that was all
documents.
part of the original cost, was,
I'm not certain now what was part of the original cost, other than the steel, the structure.
so the engineers, Lance,
Ty and Bond is they do a lot of work for us. Any major project, they do all the drawings, they do all the inspections, they do all the,
so the cost to pay them, the money to pay them came out of the
yeah, they.
original
they're-
plan?
In the contract, there was a contract specifically for them for bridge design and all the permitting that had to go with it, yes.
So when we approved the money,
Yeah, I didn't see it in that original, now that I've gone back and looked at it, I didn't see the engineering on our side in the Paragon contract.
No, that was a different contract.
Okay.
There's two separate contracts, one for Ty and Bond, one for Paragon, which both were approved here
okay.
at some point in time.
And, all right, so we approved both of them?
Yeah.
I
Okay.
don't recall the tie and bond one. I may just be
Well, that was
drawing a
done
blank on it.
a while ago, because we had all the permitting, it's probably a good 6-7 months removed.
So presuming that there's a contract that the board's executed for tie and bond to do the design, engineering, and oversight, and presuming that there's a contract that we all recognize was now for the structure itself,
Yeah.
that does leave the question about the contract or lack of contract for the installation, which is a secondary issue now. The town accountant received an invoice for payment for progress to date on the installation, and she's refused to pay it because there is no contract. Now, while that would generally be a multifaceted issue of concern, there is no concern from a bidding or procurement perspective in the fact that there is no contract. The Board of Water Commissioners and Paul sought and received a waiver from DCAM, and the waiver from DCAM was for the entirety of the project. So they were exempt from having to bid because of the emergency nature of the project. So whereas normally the work being done would have to have been bid, it didn't need to be in this case. That
Okay.
doesn't, however, excuse it from not being contracted, not having the appropriate documents in place to establish things like liability and responsibility in case something were to go wrong.
So the commissioners had an agreement with a contractor.
I've been traveling quite a bit, and I don't know all the facts, so I don't want to speak.
Okay, well, we have no knowledge of it, I guess, huh?
I apologize. There is no contract.
There is no contract.
There is no written contract. My understanding from Paul was that he spoke to at least one, if not two, contractors about the need. And this one contractor gave a price that Paul believed was a reasonable price for the work required, and accepted his price and engaged him.
So at that point, shouldn't that have come to us to get approved?
It should have. The dollar value of the agreement is $44,000. So that's definitely a contract that would require the Board of Selectmen's signature.
Well, you're going to keep working with Paul and the,
Absolutely.
So is that something that we can go back and approve?
It's
do
one
you
of the-
approve a contract that some of the work has already been billed for?
It's an issue that council is going to be working with Paul on, because obviously, work has been done. If you do work for a municipality, it's incumbent upon you to make certain, as the provider of the service, that process has been followed. Curiously, it's not the responsibility of the town to certify that everything has been done correctly. So the onus is on the person that's coming in to do the work. So on a purely technical basis, without a contract, the town could say, we don't have a contract, we can't pay you, and we won't. No one is suggesting that's going to occur. A service has been offered, a service has been accepted, work has been performed, so payment needs to be made. It's just a matter of finding out how to do that legally, appropriately.
Okay, so you can let us know.
I will. My hope actually will be that when Paul's able, that he can attend a meeting where we can have this discussion as well, just because I'm sure there are nuances that I'm not aware of. And I think it's probably best that he be given the opportunity to fill in any of the blanks.
It's unfortunate because it is
Hopefully-
using up the winter.
But hopefully the conversation with council can be expedited with Paul in the conversation.
But you're still waiting on Paragon anyway.
Apparently, based on, again, I got that just today from Paul.
Okay.
That I read you. And Carolyn went and pulled the file, and the engineering services for the bridge replacement project was approved by the board November 28th, 2017.
So that was a
So it was
while.
a year ago tomorrow.
Okay, so that was like the first thing that was done
Yeah.
then.
Because we had to go through the Board of Conservation and all that
I
stuff.
remember that, yep.
Good. Questions?
Thank you, Carolyn,
All
for
set?
pulling that.
I think so.
Okay, thank you
Next
for that. Review, discuss, sign, post the special town meeting warrant.
Madam Chair, you should each have a copy of the document that now has the watermark council-approved draft. That came in from council late this afternoon, which is why you didn't see it until just now.
There are copies there if anyone in the audience wants them.
So the timeline before you is that town meeting is called for Thursday, the 13th of December. A special town meeting requires a 2-week posting, which would be this coming Thursday, the 29th. Whatever happens this evening needs to culminate in an executed document being able to be posted by the constable by Thursday.
By Thursday at what time,
What
Karen?
time is our town meeting?
There is no, actually, even though the meeting is 7, the law would allow any time during the 24-hour period, curiously. So you can post it before 7, or you can post it at
Anytime.
11:59.
Okay.
Okay.
We actually ran into that issue with the posting of an election warrant a couple of years ago. I think you might remember that
I
one.
remember.
So. All right, so Article 1, we don't anticipate at this point having any prior year fiscal bills to pay. There's one issue that is being chased currently, short dollars, $109, I think, a Verizon issue that,
Gee, $109.
yeah. So it may be that it's a legitimate bill, it may be that it's not, but,
That's not in the desk drawer.
no, that was not.
Oh, okay.
No, that was, the accountant believes it was paid, but perhaps misapplied to another bill.
Oh,
So there may have been an overage on one bill and this one left hanging. So we're in the process of chasing that, and within the next 2 weeks, hope to have that nailed down. So that article, even though we don't currently need it as we sit tonight, we'll leave it in case we do in 2 weeks. Article number 2, we get into current fiscal year financial articles. These are majority vote articles. The first is for $7,500 for the costs associated with the American flags along Main Street. We've had some discussion about whether or not this is operational or whether this is one-time capital. And my expectation is between now and the town meeting, we'll have a better sense of that, and if this needs to be reduced to remove anything that's ongoing operational, because this is one-time revenue, then that'll be a motion that'll be made on the floor.
So technically you could pass over it and do it in April.
Could do that, or just remove whatever portion is operational. If they're looking to
Okay.
buy flags or poles,
So
or
who's going to get in touch with the flag committee to,
I will reach out to them.
okay.
Yep. Next, you'll see.
But we don't have to worry, but we can leave it for now.
Absolutely.
We can deal with that on the floor.
Yep, because it'll be
Okay.
going down, not up.
Okay.
Article 3 is, as we spoke of at the last meeting last week, $35,000 to supplement the legal expense account. On that note, I do want to just register a concern about legal. When we went out to bid and you voted to select a new council and change the manner in which we receive and pay for their services, if you take the $3,300 a month over the 12 months, that leaves roughly $6,000 plus or minus for all other legal. And you'll recall that litigation and labor are billed at the hourly rate. Just in the first 2 weeks, we've got bills for about $1,000 in legal for litigation and labor. So I don't expect that you could extrapolate that 2 weeks out over the remainder of the fiscal year, but it may be something that we're going to be having to visit in the spring. And given that this is the first time we've done it this way, and we did it mid-year, I think that's a reasonable thing to have to consider adjusting in the spring. But I just want to put it on the radar screen that,
I'd expect that we might have to do that when you think about, well, we've got one more union
sure.
discussion. We've got all of the stuff that we've talked about with personnel policies and that's all.
I believe personnel policies are general legal, but that's just me.
We could argue it. See how successful we'd
Like to
be.
argue it towards the cheaper?
Well, yeah, that's I think what Jim's trying to say.
Depends on which side of the argument we're
Yeah,
on.
yeah. But, I mean, potentially, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, nothing that can be done or should be done at this town meeting because we wouldn't be using one-time revenue to supplement the operating budget. This is for a very specific issue that was a one-time issue.
Yeah.
Okay. Article 4, see if the town will vote to pay $50,000 to pay one-time retroactive wage settlements for police, fire, and non-public safety unionized town employees. This is specific to union groups. We have the issue that was the Joint Labor Management Committee's mediated resolution to a multi-year police contract, and then a subsequent matter that this board took up with the union, and an agreement was made to extend the retroactive payment beyond that which had originally been paid. So there shouldn't be an expectation that retro, that one-time hit, is going to be absorbed within the operating budget. So this seeks, the bulk of this number is to cover the retroactive for the police. You've not yet approved fire or clerical. If, as things are shaping up now, the deals that are discussed at the table come before you and you approve, there may be a little bit of retro in those too, but nothing remotely like what you see with the police.
So then why doesn't this say police and the rest of it, like to go into a line for that?
But it would stay as an article reserved for retro, pay for unionized employees. So
Okay,
it can't
so
be used
just
for
in
any other
general,
purpose.
okay.
Right. Can't use it on non-unionized people, you can't use it on widgets, it is what it is.
Yes?
Maybe save time on town meeting floor next week. What happens if these don't pass? And where does the finance committee stand on these? Will there be recommendations?
They have to make recommendations, so once the warrant is finalized, they've seen the draft, but it's not real until it's real. So once it's real, they will have met between now and the evening of town meeting to make their recommendations.
Okay, that's question 2. Answer to question 1. What happens if these don't pass?
Well, right now, there is a deal that has been done. Ink is dry, and it must be paid. It will have to be paid from available revenues within the police department budget, or a subsequent transfer from another line once municipal relief transfers can be effected sometime in the
That-
spring.
That would not be until the spring.
Right.
Until the town meeting.
Right?
Will
What
the
it-
town
what-
be provided with details on these, like why for Article 3 and Article 4?
What are Article 3 and 4?
The two that we're just talking about, or you were just talking about? The 50,000 and the 35,000.
I would think absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
So there will be a why we're doing this with details.
well, I guess detail is a subjective term, but I would expect that if I were on the floor of town meeting, I would want to be informed as to what these dollars are going to before I would
Correct.
cast a vote. And I think that the board and myself would have an obligation to provide those answers, yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, when you asked, what if you voted no on that?
Yeah? Well, I think Jim just answered that.
But a substantial part of one of those has already been agreed on with the police union. And the impact of voting no would mean that the people expecting that retro pay would not get that until April at the at the spring town meeting.
When it was put into the regular operating budget.
Or I
No.
think that it's already been agreed to, it's a union contract. So they would get the money at some point, but it would not, we're asking, on an article, we're asking the town to borrow or transfer, raise and appropriate that money.
50,000
Uh,
for
which is
retroactive.
in-
It's a union contract, and what I'm not understanding is, why are we paying, why is it retroactive?
Because it hadn't been agreed to.
Why, when the contract was negotiated,
It wasn't.
Because it wasn't agreed to until within the last couple of months. And it extends out over the past 2 fiscal years.
and why is that?
It was a
Because the
piece
parties
of the
couldn't come to agreement.
contract that had not been agreed on, a component of the contract that had not reached agreement. Agreement was reached a couple months ago to the tune of $40,000.
Union contracts, generally speaking, not necessarily just municipal union contracts, but in industry as well. Sometimes we hear about teachers all the time. We're working 2 years without a contract, or a healthcare.
Yes, but I've
The-
never
the
been paid
retro-
retroactively as
Yes.
a teacher. I have never been paid retroactively when I've worked without a contract. It's always been going forward, it's never been retroactive.
That's between.
So
you and
I've
me.
never heard of a teacher being paid retroactively.
Okay, well, we'll
I
try
actually
to,
have, and I could provide examples for you, but
Really, yeah,
We'll-
I'm
we'll
not-
try to-
That's too bad, I feel bad.
we'll try to prepare answers that are going
Yeah.
to help you and others.
Okay,
For that
that's why I'm
meeting,
asking
okay?
the questions here.
And Madam Chair, just one last piece, just before anyone leaves the room or at home watching, thinks that the police department employees were uncovered or working without contract protection or
That's not
benefits
true.
while
not
this was being done. There is something that's referred to as an evergreen clause in all of these contracts, which states that the existing terms and conditions will stay in full force and effect until such time as subsequent agreement is reached. So,
Correct.
just so, I don't want anyone to walk out thinking that, these poor guys and gals have been functioning without the protections of a contract, because that's not the case. And moving on, we next see Article 5, and this is appropriation of $5,500 to supplement the audit service expense account. And we talked about that last week. When you have a change in treasurer collector, it is protocol to have an audit of anything and everything in-house to make certain that the books are left at a point where everybody agrees they were left. So if something comes up under somebody else's tenure that is a year later, we know that there was a clean starting point.
So this is an independent auditor?
It is,
Okay.
yep. Article 6 is $3,900 for the facilities expense account for repairing or replacing the relay electronic start in the elevator for Town Hall. Article 7 is $5,000 to supplement the facilities expense account for the purpose of replacing a water pump related to the heating system for Town Hall. Article 8 is $7,500 for the purpose of funding an update to the roadway pavement management plan. Article 9 is $1,500 for the town's share of the regional animal control shelter. We talked about that the contract came in roughly $3,000 over the grant funds that were available. Article 10 is $2,100 for replacing or repairing the rifle strap on the John Burney Blood Monument.
Did you find any more information out about that?
Not only did I not, but I didn't even try.
Oh, okay.
I apologize.
That's right, it was Thanksgiving in between, sorry.
I actually spoke with Roger at one point on something else, and it
That's
didn't even
okay.
it didn't even come up on my
It's not a big
in
thing.
my head. Article 11, $46,000 to approve modifying the capital plan that had been approved in fiscal 18 to allow what had been previously approved, $46,000 for truck-mounted ground speed spreader controls, which is for the SALT program, to be repurposed for the purchase of a roadside mower. And that has been approved by capital. Article 12, to see if the town will vote to amend the fiscal 19 capital plan to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds. In this case, it would be transfer from ambulance receipts. The sum of $66,360 for the purpose of replacing Medic 1 for the Townsend Fire EMS Department, as approved by the Capital Planning Committee.
Are we going to get the copy of the updated plan?
Yes. Making that note.
'Cause I think we have to have it in hand before we can do
Yep.
this, right?
Article 13 would be $5,000 for the purpose of repairing or replacing a portion of the roof at 274 Main Street, also known as the Rec Center. That council comment came in from council. He thought it appropriate to give some other identifier for people that might not otherwise know what that address is. And this would be to do a valley in the existing slate roof with stripping the existing slate, putting in water barrier, putting an aluminum valley in, and then reslating copper nails to finish and button the project up.
So
Article...
you've already got a quote on that?
Yes, yep. Article 15 is $10,000 for the purpose of supplementing the reserve fund. You may recall that it was $9,973 and some cents, and the idea was to round it up. A member of the Finance Committee, Ms. Wood, contacted me and said they need to change the language in the article from to replenish to something else, because you're not replenishing, you're giving more. So that's why it says
Yep.
to supplement.
That's fine.
So thank you, Andrea, for that. Article 16 is the $15,000 for the purpose of supplementing the fiscal 19 Police Department operating budget appropriation to lease 4 police cruisers. There's an existing appropriation of $45,000 in that line item. Article 17, to see if the town will vote to transfer within Water Enterprise Fund the sum of $30,000 from free cash to professional service expense account. I did ask Paul, including today again, and didn't get a response back as to what this was intended for. I know that was your question last week. And our member of the commission is no longer with us. So I don't know.
So they'll have to answer it on the floor.
And same with Article 18, the sum of $115,000 from free cash for Meadow Road Main Replacement Capital Improvement Plan. So those two, I've got an outstanding ask out to Paul. But I do know that he
Did
was
the
very,
capital,
he was very busy today.
did capital approve that?
I don't have language that says that they have.
Okay.
I don't know what the 30's for, so professional services
No, I mean
wouldn't go.
115.
The project had been approved by capital, I believe. And my understanding is this is just an amount that Paul believes is needed in excess of the original authorization, but I
think
don't know that for
That would
sure.
still need to be approved by,
Yeah, I
capital
don't-
would not need, still need to approve that, yeah. Even though it's their money.
Right, we
it's
need to
still-
know what it is
the
before we can know
capital
whether it needs to
plan-
be.
And wouldn't that change the wording of this? because you'd have to do the amendment to the capital plan
And as approved by.
language
Yeah.
as well.
Yep. Which
So
goes back
that-
to your want for a copy of the updated plan.
Well, I know, but also keep in mind, you might
The
need
warrant
to
article has to be
change the
clear,
wording
yeah.
on Article 18 as well, to reflect change the capital plan.
Article 19 is $10,000 for professional services in the treasurer collector budget to cover the cost of the required professional services of a municipal finance consultant during the absence of the treasurer collector, as we discussed last week again. Article 20 is the sum of $100,000 for the purpose of funding information technology and telephone system upgrades for the town hall, library, council on aging, highway department, and water department. Water department and cemetery and parks department. The two departments not included in this are police and fire, as they're already done as a part of what was most recently done with the Neshoba Regional
Is any part of
Dispatch.
that project coming from a grant?
There's
The grant
another
we have?
$50,000 that's being funded by a grant.
We
This
didn't
is-
get
this
quite
is-
as much as we
yeah,
thought we
this
were
is
going
the
to.
standalone
This is
additional
to add,
piece.
okay,
Yep.
all right.
And Article 21 is a placeholder that I did have some communication with a member of the Board of Trustees from the library just this evening. By communication, I mean I got an email, hoping that we'll have an idea between now and town meeting what should be plugged into this. But this is seeking a number of dollars to fund HVAC and lighting repairs and/or upgrades in the library, meeting hall, and council on aging buildings. There have been issues that I think we're all familiar with that go back to, if not soon after the building was opened, shortly thereafter anyway. And this is an ask to be able to determine if there's a fix, and if so, what it costs, and then does town meeting want to go forward with it. Next, for Article 22, you'll see a real property article. This is the one we talked about as well over the last several months, which is the West Meadow Road Bridge project. These would be the temporary access easements and the permanent easement for the reconstruction, reconfiguration, realignment of that bridge. Between now and town meeting, those blanks will be filled in with the appropriate references.
Will there be a map at town meeting or some sort of?
There will.
drawing?
There actually will. We do have, I believe, there are 75% design. I apologize, Madam Chair, I'm just talking to the audience.
Talk.
There are 75% design plans on file already. I don't know that we'll have anything beyond 75 at that time, but the 75 design plans do show each of these easements. Article 23, to see if town will vote to authorize the board, and it goes on. This is one, and I know that we do have a member of the Housing Authority here this evening. This is a Housing Authority article relative to their ongoing work regarding the creation of veterans' housing. The two articles that have comments left in them in this draft warrant were both submitted by elected bodies, so I didn't do anything about accepting or deleting town council's comments. The ones that come in with departments that are within my authority to have those conversations, make those decisions, those have been cleaned, and they were all kind of minor.
So we know that there were some changes or questions on the part of town council, some changes, I think, for the planning stuff, for the marijuana.
Right, we'll get to that in a couple of moments. This one here is just more generally, if I may ask Lori, did you ever get the,
I did not. I only got what looked to be the article that we submitted. I didn't get the page like this.
okay.
He refers to Article 24. I'm assuming he means Article 23.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
has since changed, because we had a couple of articles that were removed, so the numbering has changed.
Okay.
But I didn't want to touch his comment.
Okay. So Representative Sheila Harrington's going to call you tomorrow in reference to this. And I believe we have an appointment with town council tomorrow as well. So we should be able to resolve this.
Okay.
We have gone with,
Can we
Okay.
just confirm that? Carolyn, you were doing the scheduling.
Yeah, there's nobody from.
Nobody signed up from housing.
signed up for.
to meet with town council tomorrow. And that's what I think really needs to happen.
Yeah, this
Is there
clearly
a
needs-
slot open? Because Chaz thought he had an appointment.
I think you have, I think there's time.
Show up. We did decide that at the end, if anybody came, but I think this is something I probably should have informed.
Yes, definitely. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's check the schedule, okay? Because I think at a minimum, you and Chaz should be there.
Yeah, we have no problem with discussing with council. Maybe he's never done anything like this before.
I just think he's not familiar with the project and
Correct.
what you're trying to do.
Correct. Well, also probably not familiar with the fact that we've already done this twice through the courts. So he's right that it does need a court decision. We've never done an appropriation before, so I'm not sure what he's asking about there.
Well, there's no appropriation
No,
in
there's
this
no
anyway.
funds that we have had, the town, basically before the Board of Selectmen supported the project, and when it went to town council to go to the court to have it extracted, as it has been done twice before, it just came out of, legal budget.
Okay, so we'll make sure that you have some time with town
Thank you.
council tomorrow.
Okay. Next, Article 24 is the
Jim, just one, Lori, I don't know if you were here earlier. This needs to be nailed down for Thursday.
I missed the public part, and I'm sorry, I
Yeah,
was a little late.
But when we started talking about the town meeting, we need to have the warrant signed by the end of the day on Thursday.
Well, I'm
Okay.
hoping that we'll resolve with town council
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Yeah, I just wanted you to know it's gotta
Any
get
changes
done.
have to be
It's gotta get
completed
done.
and submitted
Yeah.
back to Carolyn by,
Well, there is no appropriation, so it will be a
Yeah.
majority vote.
Okay, I mean, it might be a very simple conversation, but,
Hopefully it is.
There's an opening at 4 and 5.
How about the 5? I think Chaz will have to get out of work a little earlier. But I can do either one, but it would be good if Chaz was there. He did all the research, so we have all the book, and so did Sheila Harrington. So we have the appropriate article.
okay. Thank you, Carolyn.
Yeah, he's confirmed. Thank you. He's watching,
Okay.
so he let me know.
oh, hi, Chaz.
Moving on.
One second, let me just get this captured. Okay. I just anticipated a complicated motion, so I was just taking the chance to take a crack at it.
Okay.
Okay. Article 24 and 25 are the stabilization articles. Last week, we had talked about the value of keeping the general stabilization article if there wasn't going to be an effort to place any money in. Looking at what the expected free cash is, although not yet formally certified, and looking at the amount of those free cash dollars that would be being sought for the articles in the warrant, looking at holding $250,000 aside for the roadway pavement fund that we talked about for next fiscal year, and looking at what we anticipate we would need to hold in reserve for the spring for overages that we would expect in snow and ice. There is the ability to do this, $50,000 into stabilization. Given the fact that we've got some borrowings coming up that are being anticipated, you never know when we're going to get a review from our bond rating agencies, and it is always a good indicator when they can see not
See
only
that you're
that
putting
it's,
money in the bank.
yeah, not only that it's not being used, but that it's in fact being grown.
Can I ask a question to that? Can you explain certified free cash and why it takes so long to do?
Absolutely, absolutely. In a business, you might consider it excess and deficiency. We predict 18 months in advance of the fiscal year what the budget is going to be, how much money we expect we're going to take in from all of our sources, and what we expect to spend. when we, 18 months later, close the books and the dust settles out, we learn that all things considered, we spent less than we thought, and we took in more than we had expected. If that's the case, that delta is then presented to the Department of Revenue. Dear Department of Revenue, we've closed our books, here are all the appropriate legal forms, and the net is this amount of money that we have available to us when we close the books. They call it free cash. It's a terrible word because it's neither free nor is it cash, but that's what it's called.
It's almost like a leftover in your budget.
Okay, I just want
Yeah.
to understand it.
I budgeted this amount, this is how much I have in my account, and I didn't spend all of what I had in my account.
Or you got an infusion that you weren't expecting from
And
an
my
uncle.
boss gave me a bonus. So I have a few dollars extra from that, so.
Now, the reason on the timing is you close the fiscal year July 1st, June 30th. You then have the month of July to continue to wind that fiscal year down. So then you have 351 cities and towns trying to close their books, get everything buttoned up, and then they all start putting it in the pipeline with the Department of Revenue. And the Department of Revenue has got to take all of those, certify that the books are closed appropriately, that everything lines up, and then that the free cash is what it's being suggested it is, and send those certifications back. So there's an awful lot of work that DOR has to do in a very short period of time, and it hits them all at once.
Okay.
So it's a matter of timing.
Okay. So it's out of our control, I guess.
It is.
Okay.
It is.
Thank
I mean, I can say the one part that is in our control is if we were fully staffed and we had a treasure collector, we might have been able to close a little sooner, but we had the assistance of the paid outside support person, so that wasn't as huge an impact as it might otherwise have been, but it definitely did slow things down. But even if we had gotten our docs in a month earlier, we still would be in that bottleneck.
In that line.
And it will take the time that it takes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Article 25 then moves to the Capital Stabilization Fund, and this would be what has, to my eyes, looking back at prior warrants, become the usual and customary $200,000 to cap stabilization. We then get into general bylaws and adoptions, majority votes. The first is the unregistered motor vehicle bylaw, as previously discussed. Police chief or designee becomes the agent that does the investigation and makes the report to the board. The board is the one that determines, based on that investigative report, if a fine should issue.
I'm going to just bring it up here because we're already talking about it. I got an email from a citizen who is not happy with the way that this bylaw is working, saying that it takes too long. I responded that we're following the process that the law lays out, and that it is going to be on the town meeting. And if somebody wants to make a suggestion for how to change that, then they're welcome to put an amendment on. But at this point, it's pretty much the way it is, but we're switching to give the police the authority to enforce it.
Right. I mean, what that does is it buys you almost a month in process time, because you meet every 2 weeks, so it would be conceivably 2 weeks sitting on file waiting for you to meet to accept it, and then you delegate somebody, and then 2 weeks later, before you come back, ostensibly having visited and with a report in hand. Instead, we'll be able to have the chief do it inside that first 2 week window.
Yeah, and he's working every day, so
Right.
it's fine.
Right.
But that's not necessarily the case when it's one of us that has to do it, so.
Right on. Article 27, this is the one that you've discussed over the last couple of months regarding the property committee, making it clearer that they're advising and changing the appointment to be consistent with the other appointments by the last week of June.
And at some point, we need to figure out, what does all this mean? How does that dovetail with the things that the other, like capital planning?
Sure.
But at least that's cleaned up.
Article 28 is the article coming in from the town clerk looking to change the locations from the bylaw where we're required to post town meeting warrants. So Police Communication Center being changed to Police Station, North Middlesex being changed to the Harbor Fire Station, West Townsend Fire Station to West Townsend Reading Room, and Harbor Church staying as Harbor Church. We then get into the final two articles, which are zoning bylaws. The first is the temporary moratorium on recreational marijuana establishments. There is a note you'll see on page 8 that reads JK, that's me. So this is my note after having spoken with Lance McNally, the chair of the planning board, late this afternoon. They had originally been submitting this as a standalone warrant article. So the language appropriately said where this note comes in, this moratorium shall be in effect through June 28, 2019, or until a bylaw is earlier approved. They then came to the decision that they should probably submit a bylaw as well, concurrently. So their thinking would have been the bylaw would, if the moratorium failed, the bylaw would go in, before the people, and the people could choose this bylaw. There could be some configuration of a vote that would have allowed the moratorium to go into effect, the bylaw to get voted, and then the moratorium disappears, and this is actually the bylaw, and Lance wasn't pleased with that as a possibility, so there's a little bit of massaging that's going to go on to that sentence between he and council tomorrow.
Okay. And he is booked with council. right?
Yes. Yep. And the next and last is Article 30, and you'll note that there is a bracketed statement there to be finalized tomorrow after Planning Board Chair meets with council. There is, if you'd like to see it, there is a response that came back from council with a number of suggested edits and changes.
Could you send that?
I can actually send it right now from my phone.
Okay.
I didn't dump it in here because it isn't anything right now, because the planning board, has determined whether they accept it or going to choose what parts they.
Yeah, I don't need to see it until after they've talked and you guys finalized it, or they've finalized it.
So, given those 30 articles, you will note that there are two that are conspicuously missing. One was the, as of last week, not yet filled out parking violation bylaw. That was a little deeper and trickier after some research with council than we would have been able to pull off for this special town meeting. And then the pawn shop or pawnbroker 9-page bylaw. Council's comment to me was, there isn't enough time for me to put the time in that's necessary to go through this and make certain that I can say it's approved as to form. Spoke with the chief, who's here this evening, and he's agreed that wisdom is that we put it off until the spring. So that'll give us some time between now and the spring to make certain it does what everybody intends it to do. So those two articles have been withdrawn.
I have a question. I could have sworn that at some point Chief Boynton had asked for something I know I'm going to get it wrong. Some kind of a medical truck or a...
Yeah, that's on here.
It's on here.
It's in,
Yeah,
okay.
that was the second revision to the capital plan.
Oh, all right,
using
that was
ambulance
that one.
receipts.
Okay, all right. In library, we have two, yep, you've got that one in, okay.
So, given the above, it would be appropriate, if it's your wish, to vote to accept the warrant with the following conditions, and those conditions being that you are approving the warrant contingent upon receipt of the final version of the Housing Authority article regarding veterans housing and the planning board's 2 zoning articles related to adult use of recreational marijuana, both of which must be received on or before the close of business on Thursday, at which point in time you will execute out of session and the constable will post. And I know Carolyn got that down verbatim.
Did you get it, Carolyn?
Good, because I got to read.
I think, well, we're still.
You can just
So
say
you move to
what it-
accept the warrant with the conditions that the approval for are contingent upon the Housing Authority and the Planning Board articles being buttoned down, will execute warrant on Thursday and post.
Lori?
Sign it outside of a meeting.
In either case, whether it's planning or housing, if they're not, because I know that planning last night voted to have a public hearing, in fact, the chief was there, public hearing referencing the bylaw, the marijuana bylaw. And so it was supposed to be posted today, and that's in 2 weeks. And it would be to massage a couple of things that that town council actually recommended. So well, that will be for informational purposes only.
Yeah, if I can.
It's different.
through-
And also
through-
amend on
through
the
you-
floor.
Yeah, through you to Lori.
Well, that was my question.
Right.
So.
The expectation of the public hearing is if the public comes up with something that everybody at the table says, oh, why don't we think of that? Amendments can be made on the floor. But prior to that, the expectation is that council and the planning board chair are going to nail down the warrant.
Okay, by Thursday.
Yeah.
So
And the public
changes
hearing
can
is
still be made.
required by
Absolutely.
law on a zoning article.
And let's
So
just
let's-
play that hand out
sure.
completely. Let's say that town council, isn't able to get here for some reason, or, Jazz
Okay,
gets
all
abducted.
right.
You currently have these articles in the warrant.
Okay, so
They-
we
they
can present
exist.
and talk on town floor.
I'm sorry?
I mean, the warrant will be presented, even if it needs a massaging on town floor, and council
You
will be
could make an
there.
amendment.
Right.
An amendment can be made, so these are not gonna be stricken from the record. They won't be taken off of here. If we, say there's a storm tomorrow and nobody comes,
Right.
okay?
That's the point I'm making, Lori, is you currently have, for what it's worth,
What's here.
you each have what's here.
Okay,
Ideally, between now and Thursday, working with council, it'll be something different.
okay.
But nothing precludes you from, on the floor of town meeting, making a motion to amend, so long as you're not,
The intent is the same.
right, you're within the
Understand.
four corners of the article, not making it more
Right.
restrictive,
I understand
those standard rules.
Yeah.
I do have one question for Lori, if I may. Yeah. What time is that public hearing? The public hearing is scheduled for
6:30.
On the
What?
12th, I believe.
6:30? No, I think it's the 11th.
Well,
the
it was
11th.
going
It
to
is
be
the
the
12th?
11th, but it
It's
was
moved to the
changed
12th.
to the
Oh,
12th.
it's the 12th at
I
6:30
didn't hear about that.
in this room?
I don't know exactly what room it was.
Which
Okay,
one?
but it'll be in this
I
building?
believe It's in Memorial Hall.
It's in the Memorial Hall.
You have
The
to have
Memorial?
it in a newspaper for 2 consecutive weeks in order
Right,
for the
correct.
AG to approve it. So it was moved to the 12th, and it's in the Memorial Hall. I'd be happy to put it on the website if you want.
That'd be great.
What else is on the 12th? Something else was on the 12th.
Yeah, there's a CBA meeting at 6:45, there's a master plan meeting at 6:30.
Yeah, well,
Which is why the rooms were all
There's
taken.
Which is why it's
I
in
think I
Memorial
have
Hall,
4
'cause all the rooms
meetings
are
on the
taken.
12th that I'm supposed to be at all at the same time.
So just so the public
Well,
knows, the
12th is
public
busy.
hearing is to determine whether or not, I mean, there's a number of very important issues that have to be talked about.
well,
at
I
the-
think it's,
at
I
the
think
public
it's
hearing
good
for
because,
marijuana.
I think it's good because it's like a pre-town meeting discussion,
Absolutely.
you know?
And that's what we were saying last night. We really
It works
like to
well.
have the input.
The bylaw is basically written, the bylaw is
Yeah.
written. There's only a few lines that just
Right.
need the approval.
Clarifications.
And to make sure that we get things in the right order as far as what happens when.
Well,
at
that's
town meeting.
what they're gonna work on tomorrow, so.
Correct.
Okay,
I
Carolyn?
just, the planning board has to submit a report to town meeting regarding the bylaw to be sent
Correct.
into the AG's office. So
Correct.
are you planning on doing that report after the 12th hearing? Because I gotta put the packets together, that's the only reason I'm asking. So I
That's
need
all
to
right.
make copies
Ask
of the report.
But I
And
thought the
Lance.
report got submitted on the floor.
It can be.
It can be.
It can be, but it needs to be a
I
writing.
think that's how we've done it
Yeah,
before.
it just needs to be a
I
writing,
make
that's all.
copies for everybody to have in their packets. If you don't want it that way, that's your choice, but I just.
I think it's up to Lance
Okay.
and Beth, the chair.
Yeah, just something in writing so the record exists other than just the,
She
Right, 'cause
takes
that's gotta be
minutes
submitted
right
to the
away,
AG
so it
anyway.
will be in a draft form anyway that night.
Because it'll be difficult to make all the copies and staple them, so I guess we could just make a stack and stick them
But
on
they
the
can do
table.
that, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. I move the board accept the warrant and contingent upon the Housing Authority and Planning Board articles reviewed with the town council and execute the warrant and post on Thursday, 11/29.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
4.1, discussion and update regarding Neshoba Valley Regional Dispatch, membership and timeline. Just to bring the board up to current, was it 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. Jim and I met with 2 representatives from the state 911 and the director of Neshoba Regional. And our chiefs were there. Sheila Harrington was there. Senator Tron was there. And we had a really good meeting. Just kind of bounced around. Everybody got to say what was on their minds, so it was cleansing in a way, and I think we left it in a good place. What did come out when we spoke with the 911 folks was, and even our chiefs agreed, this is not something, if we did decide or do decide to go with a new regional agreement with Pepperell and Ashby. This is not going to happen by July 1st. So we're probably looking at least another year with our current arrangement. There's too many hurdles that need to be achieved first. One of them, and one of the most important, is the feasibility study, because it could be that the feasibility study comes back and says this doesn't make sense, so worst case scenario, that's that. So meanwhile, and that's why we did the reaffirmation of the appointment, Jim being on the admin board and the chief as his backup. And then to continue on the operations side too. And to continue to work with Neshoba to smooth out any rough edges that might still exist. And, we're going to be in this for at least another year and a half or so. So we might as well do the best that we can. Okay? Meanwhile, you guys are off exploring other things. But it's just not going to be overnight, and we want people to know and be realistic about that. Okay?
Madam Chair, can I just address the failure word?
Oh, yes, please do.
Okay. When looking at the minutes of a meeting that the admin board held, there was a lot of discussion that centered around what was the belief that in a selectmen's meeting in the town of Townsend, it was stated that the Neshoba Valley Regional Dispatch District is failing. And when I read those minutes, it was a surprise to me. I know that Sue actually sat down with the director, and I believe it was attributed in that conversation to me. He had the understanding that it was something that I had said in a meeting.
Yeah, that's what he said to the chief and I that day.
So combed all the meetings, watched them all, listened carefully, and the word failure was used by Chief Boynton, but not in a way
context.
to suggest that they had failed. But what he said, and it is in the letter that ultimately was signed by the board, it says that he was coming before you to seek your approval to do an intermunicipal agreement with Pepperell in case there had ever been a failure with Neshoba.
It was just a
to have
backup plan.
So at the last admin meeting, I wanted to clear the air with that, made that point, apologized if people have been carrying around in their minds that, that was something that was said here, something that was said by me. It wasn't the case. I invited them to look at the meetings. They're online. It was met, I think, with some relief, but I did want to just say it in this forum as well, because it was from this forum that it was supposed to have originated. So just so people understand that.
Yeah,
it wasn't
and I
ever
think
said.
it was totally taken out of context. I think somebody listened to the meeting and
It wasn't even out of context, it was never said.
But no, I mean, Chief Boynton said
Yeah.
In case of.
a failure.
Right.
But he was talking about another subject altogether, and, you know, so it was totally out of context. But that just goes to show you what the game of gossip will sometimes get you
Can be
into.
quite destructive.
It can, it really can. But I felt like it was a good meeting. I felt like it was a healing meeting in that sense, you know, and that we're in a good place on both sides.
Okay.
Okay?
Good.
Okay. 5.1, Board of Selectmen's announcements, updates, and reports. Anything, Cindy?
I have nothing.
I believe there is a play at the high school this weekend.
What is it?
Oh, you're gonna get me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. It's escaping me, so.
Oh, that's a funny
I think
one.
it's 3 nights that they're doing it, so they always do a good job.
Thank you. That's all you have?
That's all I have.
Okay. Cable, yes, it's here. The cable committee had sent us a request to be on our next agenda. And I'm thinking we probably should just reach out to them if you would, Jim. I don't want to waste their time coming to us to talk about something that, you know, where we're at with that, if I'm correct, is we're working with town council to get council to come in and get that jump started.
Right. Kate, in town council, and I have been in communication with one another on the 2 outstanding issues. So she is now coming up to speed on that.
Okay.
So, I mean, I got that, actually, an email just today from her. Adam put her on the issue when he and I met last week.
Okay, so there's no sense in having them come here only to hear us say next week.
Yeah,
That's-
unless it's...
Unless they
it's their-
move faster.
Well, unless it's the Cable Commission's members' wish to express dissatisfaction with the pace, which I sense that might be what
Well,
the
could you
hope was.
reach out to them, please,
Absolutely.
and just talk with them? And
I'm sure that they are.
yes, and
Without having spoken to them.
I'm sure too, but if it's a matter of, yeah, we're not pleased either, and this is what's happening.
Right.
Because I wouldn't want them to have to come here and say it for us to just
I got you.
have that brief conversation. So just, you know, if we, and I'm not saying they can't come and talk if they want, but Town Properties Committee, can we put that on a future agenda, Carolyn?
Sure, what would you like?
Probably January. And I know this might sound crazy, but if it comes up more than a couple times, then I think there's maybe a pattern here. Is there some way that we would be able to provide assistance to other boards or committees for things like taking the recording of minutes and the proper recording of minutes and things like that?
I know the last time we discussed it, you'd asked that we send out soliciting input from boards and committees as to what they believe their needs were, and that we work that into the budget cycle. That's now officially begun.
Well, the reason I'm saying that is I every once in a while I'll go in and look at minutes for some boards and committees, and it's not to the quality that I'm used to for some of them. I know they're trying, but I think it might have to do with whoever is switching around and taking the notes. For example, I saw some that it looked like only the questions were recorded, but I know there was a discussion. So, all right, somebody asked a question, what was the answer? So, and that was, it's like it's just not complete. So, just to kind of put that in
We could even probably do a
a workshop.
workshop on we generally, every couple of years, do the open meeting law and conflict of interest. Writing a decision has been one that hasn't been done here in some time for boards and commissions that have to write legal decisions, but also minute taking could be added to that. So I know that new town council does offer those seminars free of charge. I think they
Yeah,
categorize
can we
it
just
as for
add
day people and
that,
night people.
because when I read some of the minutes, I felt like I wasn't getting the whole picture of what
Are we getting any
happened.
response to the request for, nobody's said that they need any help?
Emails?
No one has said that they
Oh.
need any administrative help on their boards. Oh,
Lori?
Answer for that. Because we did have a discussion on the Townsend Housing Authority about it, and Chaz started to do an email back, but it's kind of difficult for us to determine that, because a lot of what has been done like on nights and weekends when we're not working, we're volunteering to do whatever, and whatever research. So it's hard for us to put all that together, all the paper, all the ink, all the time that's been used over the last 3
To
years.
figure out a
anyway,
budget?
To figure it out, because we never did a budget before. I'm talking just about that group. So I
So it
think
sounds
that's
like we
why
need
you
some
haven't
budget
gotten a
assistance
response.
too. Budget assistance would be helpful then.
We've already had, I think, Natalie come in to see the town clerk or Carolyn in reference to the forms, and yes, it is for the next year's budget, but we never did it before. So we're now handling that on our own, a task that we never did before, so we don't know the process.
I would guess that, the flag committee, this is the first time they've asked for money as well. Maybe they
I'd be
could
happy
use
to
some
sit
help
down
with that.
You or Natalie or Chaz, whoever you guys want to delegate to go through the nuts and bolts of how to construct it. The forms for people that have been doing it here are the same forms that have been being used for a long time. So
Right.
it's the
and
first
they
time you're
just
seeing it, so
follow-
it's Greek to you.
Right, well, it is, I mean, it's not that I haven't seen other budgets from other boards,
Sure.
but it's that to pin down exactly what those figures should be, yeah, that would be Greek to me,
I'd be happy
and
to-
anybody else who's on that particular board who's never done it before.
So that's a legitimate request.
But that's why you haven't gotten an email back, not that it's not needed.
Okay.
Gotcha.
yeah, if I may, sometimes it's just it's a small number. You don't have to necessarily put, well, you haven't had one before, but you've been spending your own money, which we all do. I mean, sometimes those miscellaneous costs, like what does a few reams of paper cost? There's office supplies that are kind of a general number that a lot of boards just have a number.
And even
plugged
the
in there.
time part of it, if you,
Yeah.
well, I could maybe use somebody 5 hours a week, on average, is how that works out.
It would have to be
so.
an average, because obviously
Yeah.
it would be a busier time.
But another
That's right.
budget item that a lot of people forget about, and when I was on the FinCom, I was trying to get the FinCom to we added to our training budget, or to
That's
other
right.
expenses, is don't forget, I know you guys have like traveled to some of the Soldier On stuff, or you visited some other
Yeah, but
facilities.
We paid for it,
And-
and I paid for it.
Right, but you come up with some numbers on, what kind of travel. We have a mileage reimbursement rate that if people are traveling, you can put that in, it just needs like $100 or something. I'm just guessing, $100 for that. But also if there's meetings, like there are a number of housing organizations that you guys are invited to attend.
Chaz does that.
Yeah, but.
But for
you-
trainings and
there's
stuff like
fees.
that.
There's
There are
conference
fees,
fees. You need to budget those.
Okay.
So don't forget to include those in the budget area.
And, okay, so while we're talking about that, did you or Carolyn get the invoice that we got, that Townsend Housing Authority got from KP?
I haven't seen anything.
Okay, so
They sent you a bill?
it was supposed to be transferred to you from our clerk. At our last meeting, we got a bill from KP. It was addressed to Michelle Cannon, may she rest in peace, and who has been gone for quite a number of years now. And it was for a quarter of an hour, and it had like 4 sentences on it. I'll have to make sure that you get it. That meant absolutely nothing to us. And
Prior year.
with that,
We've got a prior year bill now.
we have no legal
Request.
budget.
That was probably David Jenkins reviewing your legal request that you had submitted.
However, the 4 sentences that were there describing what they did for 15 minutes was not what we requested. And I will bring it up again that, and I hate to be a broken record, but it's got to be out there. We don't know where that $10,000 is. And in
That is-
September, when I wrote that out, it was in reference to the $10,000 check that CDAC wrote to RCAP. And in that 15-minute explanation, which we never got an answer to this date. So we're still in the same place
It
as
sounds
we were
like they
before.
didn't finish it.
But
There was an email
their
sent.
bill doesn't even describe what I asked for.
Okay, pass it
Thank you.
on. Jim, did you have any updates?
Just a warrant. That's been
That's
the solitary
been
focus over the
taking care
weekend.
of you, okay. Meetings, when's our next meeting? The 4th.
Fourth,
Next Tuesday.
Carolyn's looking at me. Don't you forget that. Yeah, we have a very important meeting, but it's going to be brief. Okay? And after that, are we going to have a meeting the Tuesday before town meeting? No. That's not
That is,
necessary. Town
Oh,
meeting's on a
close.
Thursday, 13th.
So the 11th is,
if needed. I mean, I don't,
You're not going to be back, are you? You're-
I'll be
you're
back the
doing-
next day.
Yeah.
Do you want to post like an hour or two before town meeting to go over
yes,
motions and all
please.
that?
Yes, please. What time is town meeting on the 13th?
7. Okay, we're all set? Okay. Board correspondence?
I had a couple.
I did too.
We did receive a request from Senator Tran's office, much like we did last year, I believe, looking for projects, which he successfully got a couple for us this year.
Well, but I think that he talked about that in January. I think he wanted to come and talk to us about any legislation
Okay.
that,
Which might be the Housing Authority needing a piece of legislation, if that's in fact one of the steps that's necessary to extract the
yeah, it
land.
sounded a little bit more general than that. Did you get it?
I did, I'm looking.
Yeah, I did. Nate sent it today, but
Yeah.
I think any legislative action that you're going to require, either Sheila or Dean would be submitting it in one or the other of the houses.
Yeah, or both, but usually, well, I mean, I think Sheila's been working with them all along, but it sounded more like, are there any other things that we would like laws changed or done with, but would have to talk to Nate and see. So anyway, he wants to come in and talk about it. He might be thinking about it.
Yeah, there were 2 parts. There's 2 parts to his
Right.
email. One is to pick our minds regarding any proposed legislation that we'd like Senator Tran to pursue. And then we'll be reaching out again in early 2019 to set up our annual meeting regarding municipal budgetary requests. So, 2 parts.
I mean, it's, there aren't usually lots of legislative needs coming from these little towns who would prefer to
Keep quiet.
do it ourselves. But, anyway, okay.
And the other correspondence was another matter that looks like it's a potential future agenda item that I'm not ready to discuss tonight.
Okay, so you can just forward the request to go on the agenda to Jim or Carolyn, and we'll do it,
We'll do that.
okay?
Madam Chair, I received notice from Paul Rafuse saying that the professional services that are being sought are for projects where they need to hire an outside contractor to come in and do a dig or some minor work. For instance, right now, the issue that they've been chasing in this last couple of days, they do have an outside contractor that they've brought in to do some work. So his response was it was for that purpose, professional services. So, and the second, the 115, is an additional amount being sought because the bids for the project came in higher than the amount that was appropriated. So they would scrap those bids, go back out again, and he indicates it had been approved already by the capital.
But it
committee.
needs to be amended if the amount is different.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah,
So
it has to go
he's
back.
aware of that. So I just wanted to let you know that he did reach back out.
Okay. All righty. 5.4, review and sign payroll, just payroll, warrant out of session.
I move the board sign payroll out of session.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. There,
Madam Chair, before you consider going into executive session, given that you're meeting next week, and it's just a week away, I'm feeling
want to move this?
not particularly well enough to stay.
Well, I'm feeling particularly that I don't want to be in a small room with you if you're not feeling well. Could we move this to next week?
Yeah, just make a motion.
Don't even need to, just
just-
motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Yeah.
I move the board adjourn at 7:40.
All right, sounds good.
Did you second that? Is that
Oh,
what
second,
all
I'm
right?
sorry, I'm like so excited, yes. No executive session, let's go. So I
All
second
those in
that.
favor
Aye.
of adjourning at 7:40?
Yep.
Aye.